Hello everyone, thank you for joining us on this video. I'm here with Whitney Townsend. She is a certified yoga teacher, certified holistic nutritionist, co-owner of Soul Fitness, and a peaceful soul. Hi Whitney, thank you for joining us.
Hi, Stacy. Thank you so much for having me.
Yeah, so I first wanted to touch on the title Peaceful Soul and what connects you with that.
Thank you. Well, so oftentimes in our culture, we get prized for being very busy and for accomplishing. We gather up certificates of achievement and ribbons and degrees, and somehow we use all of those things and the accumulation of those things to make us feel worthy. And so I always love the phrase, you're not just a human doing, you're a human being. And
Mm-hmm.
that just our beingness, whether or not we're accomplishing anything or doing anything for anyone else, just by being a human being and existing, we are very much worthy of love and admiration, that we're not just defined by the things that we do. And I think that's very countercultural. It's very hard, if you come home after a busy day and you're working 2 jobs and you're raising kids, everyone applauds you and says, oh,
Mm-hmm.
how do you do all those things? You're so incredible. And if you do something different than what the culture expects, and you kind of scale back from a cultural standpoint, and you decide to live life more simply, and just spend more time being, you're not applauded in the same way, in recognizing that that's equally as an important and good way to be. So I try every single day, and it is very much a practice to just focus on being and not to get wrapped up in the doing and the accomplishing and more, and just be okay with being me, just today, how I am.
Yeah, I agree. It gets very just like we get caught up in if we don't have these titles, then who are we?
It's hard when, if we allow all those things that we accomplish to define who we are, then if we choose to let go of one of those things, like let's say you're working full time and then you decide to have a family and then you decide to stay at home. If you defined yourself so much by that job, then by letting it go, then you feel like you're losing a part of yourself, and it can feel like you're less than if you choose to let go of that. And I think that we're doing ourselves a disservice by doing that. Or sometimes you'll hear, so I'm a step parent. So I've heard people say, oh, you're just a step parent. Are you ever going to have kids of your own? Somehow we have this like ranking of different things that we think are good enough for this, being a step parent is less than a parent, or staying at home and raising kids is less than working. And, whoever comes up with this scale, it doesn't matter, but somehow we value ourselves or devalue ourselves based on that.
Oh, yes. I've especially had a hard time, because I've been home pretty much with my little boy for he's almost 5. And I
Mm-hmm.
think, finally I'm stepping in more to a job title.
Mm-hmm.
In some way, I've like the more I work, the more I feel accomplished, the more I feel, that having that title versus just having a mom, like the title mom, be like at the end of the day, I'm like, well, if I'm just a mom, did I actually accomplish like what I feel like I need to? There's that sense of anxiety.
Mm-hmm. And I think especially right now, everything that we've been through over the last couple of months with the pandemic and more people having to transition to a more parent role throughout the day, I think we can all realize how important that parent role is.
Yeah.
So people are like, oh my goodness, I don't think I could do this every single day. And so I hope that with that, there starts to be a shift, recognizing how important and difficult and equally valuable it is to stay at home and raise your kids as it is to go out and accomplish your dreams, in maybe a workplace setting. And it doesn't necessarily have to be either or, but I think that we can recognize that they're all equally valuable.
Yes, yeah, I 100% agree. And I think, between both my husband and I right now, we're both realizing how important those roles are and to have a balance of them
Mhm.
and to feel good about it no matter what. And I'd really love to dive into the yoga portion right now and kind of how you got started and, what brought you to yoga.
Mhm. Yeah. So I went to my first yoga class in 2013, and it was at the end of a very difficult breakup, and where I experienced a lot of pain, a lot of hurt, a lot of, you did this to me, you know, you made me feel this way, you broke my heart, a lot of blame, and just a lot of emotion that wasn't peaceful, that was filled with a lot of fear. And so a friend of mine, Lisa, she said, you know, why don't you come to a yoga class? And I had never been to a yoga class before. And so, you know, she was my friend. So I'm like, oh, sure, you know, I'll try it. And it was so hard. Not only the physical part of it, that was hard, but the most important part was at the end of yoga where you lay in what's called shavasana, and you just lay there with your thoughts. And I'm laying there, and it's so uncomfortable to be with myself, you know, with all the turmoil and all the feelings. And I'm just laying there in silence with myself. And I thought, like, why would Lisa think I wanted to do this? This is painful. Like, this is more painful. But it was in that moment that I knew that I had to do it. Like, this is the path. This is the journey. Being with yourself and taking away all those layers of other people and what you expect them to do, and what you truly want and the role that you play. And I think that it's the peeling back of all of those layers that really made me stick with yoga, because it was the most difficult thing. Talking endlessly with my friends about what happened and how hurt I was, it wasn't getting me anywhere. It was just, it was beating the drum of what I didn't want. So in yoga, it gave me the opportunity to just be with myself, which I had avoided because it seemed scary, and to just practice being with myself, practice the different breath work, which we can get into how breath work can help ease anxiety. And the physical postures of yoga, the actual asana that you see very widely put on like social media and Instagram, beautiful pictures of people doing yoga poses, that's just one segment of yoga, the actual physical postures. The rest of it is the inner journey into yourself. It's taking the time every single day to get to know yourself so that you can show up as the best version of yourself for all those people around you. And so it's very much a practice. I mean, I'm 7 years into it now.
Wow.
And there's days that, you know, you show up on your mat, and because you're just being in stillness, which is something that we don't do very often, you know, but we're constantly on our, you know, devices. Sometimes work requires us to be on the computer, but regardless of what device you're on, or even if you're in conversation, you're constantly focused on the other, you know, you are the subject and the other. And so you're thinking and you're processing and you're seeing, and it's all, you know, part of life. But if we don't first take that pause and check in with ourselves and how we're feeling, we can just live a life of distraction. Just constantly being kind of flung from thought to thought, from how one person feels to another person. And so even now there's some days where I get on my mat and it's uncomfortable and I don't want to do it, because it's, you know, you're getting close to yourself, and sometimes that can be uncomfortable.
Oh yeah, silence can be. I know when I started meditation, it was definitely hard to just be still, and I feel like everything that you've always, like, you know, just being with yourself, all that comes up and it's brought in the forefront. Even when I remember doing, you know, I've done yoga, you know, hot yoga, different types of yoga throughout my past. And when you're in those poses, all of a sudden, like, they'll hit you. Like, and that's how you lose your balance, or you just want to shake yourself out of that stillness. But when you realize that you're feeling that, maybe then you need to sit there longer and figure out why you're feeling that.
Yeah, and that's the what they call the lotus in the mud. And so a lotus flower grows, you know, out of a very muddy pond. And so a lot of times there's the I guess the tale of yoga, that you are the lotus flower and you bloom out of your mud, you know, that you've gone through in your life. And that just because you've been through things and you've experienced maybe difficult emotions or experiences or relationships, it's from that mud that gives you what you need so that you can bloom as who you are. And without taking time to really process those things, if we just keep running from the next thing to the next thing without processing and taking time to recognize the role that we play, then we're missing out on this beautiful opportunity to get to know ourselves.
Yeah. Yeah. Oh, I 100% agree. I think yoga for a lot of people, you know, should be something that they actively participate in, even if it's just for a small portion of the day, and to get into. And I know when I stretch and I actively participate in something like that, I feel better. And that's why I'm so excited too of the next portion about the breath work. I truly feel also that just breathing, because I feel like I'm even forgetting to breathe right now.
Yeah.
And it's like the most important thing for our bodies. So what is breath work in yoga?
So one of the other segments of yoga besides the physical postures is pranayama, which is the breath work part of it. And they go hand in hand because you want to make sure that when you're practicing the physical postures of yoga, that you're wrapping each movement in an inhale or an exhale. But breath work by itself is the practice of controlling your breathing in specific ways to bring about relaxation into your physical body. So this is a little bit of anatomy, but as you inhale, your diaphragm extends down into your belly. And then as you exhale, it comes back up. So as that muscle pulls down, it allows the lungs to inflate and take a deep breath in. And then as it relaxes, it expels the air out of your body. And oftentimes when we are stressed, we find ourselves that we're just breathing here in the upper part of our chest. Well, actually, we don't realize that we're doing it. That's the thing about breathing, is that it's autonomic. You don't even realize that you're breathing. You don't have to consciously think about it. But when tension comes up in our body, our muscles tense up, our shoulders tense up. You know, this is oftentimes what we see. People are like on the computer or they're driving and their shoulders creep up and scoop forward. And so that they're not breathing fully. And so when we're not taking deep, full breaths, we're not oxygenating our muscles and we're not oxygenating our brain. And so that's when you see some cognitive decline. You're not able to think as clearly. Your emotions get more heightened because as your body starts to be in this stress state, your mind starts sending alarm signals like, uh-oh, something's wrong with Stacy. Like, you know, I can tell her body's tense. There's something going on. You know, she's stressed. And so then it just kind of starts this cascade of different hormones, stress hormones into your body. So it started as just a tense moment. Your body starts this cascade that creates tense and anxiety in your body. And so pretty much once we get to that point where we're experiencing anxiety, it's really hard to unravel that. You know, your body's tense. You have those stress hormones going on. The last thing that you naturally do is go, you know what, maybe I'm going to start breathing.
Yeah.
So that's where breath work really helps, is when you make something your practice and you do it daily or as often as you can, then it becomes automatic when you're in that stressful situation. Your body kind of falls back on what it's practiced. And so breath work is something we do before and after yoga, but it's also something that you can just do anytime that you're feeling anxiety. A really helpful tool when you're first getting started is to use your actual physical body to help aid in that breathing. So you can put one hand on your belly and one hand on your heart or right above your chest. And as you're breathing, you want the hand that's on your belly to extend out prior to the one that's on your heart. And this is best done when you're laying down because you can really sense your body and your breathing. And just taking like 5 or 10 breaths, just noticing how you're breathing, slowing down and letting your body breathe how it was designed to breathe. It can send those same signals that were stress signals to your brain. It can send the opposite. It can start that rest and digest, the parasympathetic nervous system response, letting your body know, hey, everything's all right. Everything's fine. You can handle this. And that's just one. The diaphragmatic breathing is just one technique that you can use to just bring yourself in that moment when you start feeling tense. And if you make it a practice, you can say, okay, let me just take like 5 breaths. You can even do it at your desk. You know, you can just put one hand on your belly. No one will really know. And just really breathe into your belly and reset your nervous system.
And this could also, maybe stop panic attacks and anxiety attacks, because what those happen in your chest. So your chest tightens. So, I mean, that breathing, probably that cue and getting used to automatically having it into your daily practice could help prevent those type of attacks.
Mm-hmm. And sometimes if you're really wrapped up in anxiety and it's hard to set that diaphragmatic breathing in motion, if you lay on your back and you bring your knees into your chest and then bring them over to one side, so you're like twisting to the side, that twist, it pulls on your diaphragm muscle because you're twisting through the spine.
Yeah.
That will automatically make you take a deep breath because of the twist. When I worked with autistic kids, this was something that we did to help relax them down. It was, they love physical touch and motion. So the deep pressure of pushing their legs to one side automatically reset their parasympathetic and brought them into a state of relaxation. And so if it works for kids, sometimes I think, we need to treat ourselves like our own little inner child and take care of us in that same way. So that can be a really great technique to use on yourself. Just give yourself 5 minutes, go upstairs to your room, lay on your back, do some spinal twists and breathe.
Yes. Yeah. And I know I've even done it on Gray before, having him, I'm like, especially if I can see he's tensing up and getting really angry. I'm like, okay, deep breathing through the nose and out through the mouth. And I think, especially like you said, using it on kids and having them grow up with being aware of this tool and being able to use it is really powerful, because then you're not learning it from as an adult to take care of it.
Mm-hmm. There's a really great program that Goldie Hawn started, and she's implementing it in schools, and it uses brain breaks, they call them, for the kids. And the studies on it are just amazing. By giving these kids, they take these 1-minute brain breaks and they do a chime. The kids sit in quiet for a minute, and it's amazing how the kids are able to focus better. Their test results are better. They're less aggressive. There's so many amazing results to it already. And you're so right, though. If we don't start when we're young, it's harder to learn as an adult because you've already had those pathways, those neural pathways so set throughout your life.
Yes. It's just kind of like meditation, or any of these, I guess, self-development tools in your toolbox. If learning in them from a young age, you're implementing them into your daily habits, and those have such an influence on your life.
And I know a lot of people, when they find out that I teach yoga, the response will be like, oh, I wish I could do yoga, but I'm not flexible. And I always say, well, or the same thing with meditation. Oh, I wish I could do meditation, but my brain is just too busy. And I always say, well, that's like saying that you're too hungry to eat. Like the more that your body is tense, or the more that your mind is busy like a monkey mind, the more that your body is asking for these different restorative practices. A perfect example, and of course you've met my husband, Jose, but Jose is very like, I'm going to go lift weights, very strong, and he had a baseball injury many years ago. And so he has a lot of tension and lack of mobility in his shoulder. And so when I first met him, I think he wanted to do yoga, because you're like dating, so I was like, oh yeah, sure, I'll try whatever you want to do. And so he tried yoga. He's like, that was the hardest thing I've ever done. It's harder than lifting weights because you're asking your body to move in a different way. And now he loves yoga. He loves yoga. He loves the breathing techniques, because for him, it's very countercultural as well, growing up in the Dominican, very, loud, noisy music. And for him, he just likes doing the box breathing exercise where
the counting.
If you think about the 4 sides of a box, you inhale for 4 counts, hold it at the top for 4 counts, exhale for 4 counts, and then hold the exhale at the bottom for 4 counts. So you're giving yourself a pause between the inhale and then a pause at the exhale. And so just by counting, it kind of gives you that little attachment point to your breath, something to focus on. And just doing 5 breaths like that when you're starting to feel tense, it's amazing how quickly these things create a positive result in your body.
Yes, I actually remember running and using box breathing to be able to calm down my pace, and so I wasn't hyperventilating as I was. Yeah, actually, Trent, my husband, he actually had introduced me to that too, because I think in the fitness realm, that is, something that is easy to incorporate with some cardio stuff and a lot of other things.
Well, and I think what really brought me to yoga as well is that I saw a lot of people that were in fitness and focused very much just on the muscle side of it, whether it be the cardiovascular or lifting weights. And yeah, they were really strong in that one area, but I wouldn't necessarily say that they were well. Like, yes, they had strength and they were able to do and accomplish the things they wanted to. But really, I feel now and over the years in my own experience that wellness is more than just the physical. It's emotional, it's spiritual, it's the quality of your relationships, it's the mobility of your body. And so I really think that it's all of those things encompassed together that can create optimal wellness. So that's why I wanted to become a yoga teacher, really, is because when I learned all of these things, I was like, oh my God, I want to share this with people. I want to share it with people who wouldn't normally get introduced to this. I think now yoga is maybe a little bit more mainstream, but a lot of people, they just see yoga and they think, oh, it's not for me. They just make that decision. It's not for me. I don't fit that box of those people. And kind of going back to those labels, yoga, if you do yoga, if you do breathing, if you take a moment in meditation, then you can do yoga. It looks at different for everybody what their practice is.
Yeah. Oh, I agree. And I've seen even when my husband, balances with stretching and, the yoga poses, and it is for everyone. And I even have had Gray integrate into some of those, online kids yoga classes, and it can really balance their nervous systems. And yeah, and I agree with you on, it's just a whole lifestyle. It's every aspect. And that's why I'm so also excited to get into the topic of, having your most intimate relationship be you. Because how did you kind of I guess, get on that, mindset, in the mindset of that frame? It seems like yoga is definitely going inward and focusing on yourself. So
yeah. Well, like I said, when I first was introduced to yoga, I had this kind of mindset that things happen in life to you. Right? People say things to you, and then you have a reaction, which is, in my mind at that time, totally okay based on what they did. Someone said something to you, it was hurtful, so you get hurt. Someone, treated you unfairly, so you feel slighted. And it was this very reactionary response. And so I remember when I applied to become certified into the yoga program, of course you have an interview, and she said, what is your number one goal that you want to get out of yoga, becoming a teacher? And I said, I want to be less reactionary. I don't want to have every single thing that happens in my life change my state. I want to wake up every single day and know that I can have a good day and not have that in the hands of somebody else. I want to own my life. I want to live my best life on my terms. And so she was like, okay. And so, but again, it's a practice, so it goes along the way. And there's part of meditation is, like you said, you're sitting there and things come up. And one of the best things that I've heard about meditation is just imagine your thoughts like clouds passing in the sky. So you're on the ground and you're seeing those thoughts, and you just let them pass by. You don't try to get attached to them. And through doing that, I realized that I have these thoughts all day, every day. I mean, there is a you inside of your head that just all day is just chattering. You know, something happens and you have something to say about it inside your head. But just like I'm looking at the computer, so I'm the subject and the computer is the object. If you're inside of your head and you are hearing you think, it creates this separation. You are you, and then all these thoughts are kind of separate from you.
Mm-hmm.
And through meditation, I was able to grow that separateness a little bit more, so that you're kind of seated in yourself, watching everything happen, but realizing that you are not everything that's happening. Like, you can have a response, you can have a feeling, absolutely. Somebody says something and it's hurtful, but you can still choose to see that response, but then not take it onto yourself. To not change your state of peace to something else just because somebody said something. And I think through that, it helps me be in a more peaceful state.
Mm-hmm.
But no matter what, I still have a choice.
Yes.
You know, if somebody says something to me and I think, oh wow, like they're saying that I'm unintelligent, or they're saying I'm stupid, that in itself is an interpretation on my part of what they're saying.
Mm-hmm.
I think in general, we tend to judge ourselves based on our intentions, but we judge others based on their behavior. And so we don't know exactly their intention when they say something. And so we have this snap judgment, and then it creates this very reactionary response to everything.
Yes.
And so I, again, though, it's a practice, you know, like anything, you know, there's days that you can get wrapped up in what's going on. But our brains are just incredible. And when you take time in meditation to just listen to all that stuff that's going on, it's like, no wonder this is very much my life. And so it's my responsibility to choose how I'm going to respond to other people. I can either live life and blame everybody for my unhappiness and my pain and then wait on them to change.
Mm-hmm.
Or I can just recognize that people and situations are out of my control and they have nothing to do with my state of mind.
Mm-hmm.
I can change the way that and shift the way that I react and choose to be happy.
Yeah, and I agree. And my thought is, everyone is doing the best they can with the circumstances they are in and what they've like learned based on like how they grew up, or like, you know, so we don't always know what position they've been put in.
Mm-hmm.
And for us to assume creates that reaction that's a little bit harsh.
Mm-hmm.
And even the new NLP, the study of the brain training I am currently doing, you know, it is all about, you know, our perceptions too, on like if we have a fight with our partner, putting ourselves either in their shoes or being a fly on the wall and seeing that perspective from a bigger angle, what are they also perceiving the situation as,
Mm-hmm.
versus just from our perception and what, you know, we think they are saying, and then it's causing a reaction and the friction.
Mm-hmm. Well, and it's very much that attitude of rightness. I think sometimes we can get stuck in like what's right and what's true. And one of the techniques that I learned is like, so if you and I were both looking at this pen, I would look at it and say, well, it says the name of the business on this side, or the pen says the name of the business. And you are looking at it and there's nothing on this side. So you can say with absolute certainty, there's no writing on that pen. And I can like argue my point. No, the pen has writing on it, but we're both right.
Yes.
You know, from our, you know, seat of consciousness, from the way that we look at the world or the situation, that is truth. And I think especially in our close relationships, we spend so much time with that person that I think sometimes we think that they have the same mind as us, like that we're with each other every day, so they must think the same way that I do. And through that assumption, there can be such pain and hurt, because the way that they see the world or a situation or an experience is just as valid as the way that I might see it. And when we refuse to acknowledge that there's a difference in opinion or a difference in reality, then we're really doing a disservice to our relationships, because we're invalidating that other person.
Mm-hmm.
And that can really, it can take a lot of time to cultivate that, especially in our close relationships, because I think we want that person to see the world the way that we do, so that we feel like we are connected.
Mm-hmm.
But I think that you can still be really much connected in a relationship, even if you see things differently.
Mm-hmm.
There's a phrase in NLP called "the map is not the territory."
Yep.
And so basically what that means is that, you know, if you have a map, and I'm holding out like a physical map, of course we all use Google Maps now, but so if you have a map and you're driving along, the map, as you look at it, is very different than the actual territory, the actual place that you're looking at. Because you look down at the map, all you see is streets,
Left.
you know,
Mm-hmm.
maybe some geography. But when you actually look up, you see all the buildings, you see the people, you see, you know, all different iterations of the place. And that's kind of how life is. You know, we have this idea of how life is supposed to go, or how our day is supposed to go, but the actual way that the day plays out is very different, you know, because there's so many other things that are happening, so many different people who have their own agendas of what's going to happen. And so I think we all have to recognize that we may have this blueprint in our mind of how things are supposed to go,
Yep.
but we can't force that upon anyone else.
No, they definitely, they have to live their own path. And, you know, I think a big thing that I've tried to bring in to my life is also compassion.
Mm-hmm.
Of just having compassion for other people's opinions, especially when you do butt heads, or, you know, think their argument is not valid, or, you know, their side is not valid, or you are right. And I think that's a really important, especially during this time and everything we're going through. There is a lot of butting heads between family members and society and the community. So I think just reminding ourselves that we all have our different perspectives, and just because you see someone from a flat point of view, you don't see their 3D world.
Mm-hmm.
So
Right.
yeah, I definitely think that's just like a good perspective to have on life.
Mm-hmm. Well, and we all have had such different life experiences.
Mhm.
And even if, you know, like sister, so I'm the middle of three sisters. And so some people, you know, might look at, you know, kids born in the same household, raised by the same parents, in the same community. Even with that many similarities, there
Yeah.
can be such a difference in the way that each child relates to the world, and how different experiences stick with them.
Mhm.
Our brains are so incredible. Their job is to try to keep us safe, right? We're doing everything to protect ourselves. And so our brain will remember different events throughout time that were important or
Mhm.
created a lasting impression, and then try to protect you from a similar experience in the future. And so that's kind of, they say, you know, your mind is like Teflon for positivity and Velcro for negativity. And it's true, because, you know, something happens that hurts you, and so your brain catalogs that and says, oh, you know, you got to be careful, some people lie to you.
Mhm. Yeah, every experience forward is
Mhm.
based off of that instant.
Right. And so then, you know, when you're in a conversation with maybe like your now partner, and they say something, and your brain, it remembers something similar that someone before said something and it hurt you, or they lied to you. And so then your brain brings that right to the forefront and is like, careful, it might happen again. And so the response that you're having in this immediate moment has nothing to do with maybe that other person or even the topic.
Yeah.
You know, your brain is just trying to keep you safe and is warning you about something. So you start to have this physical reaction in that moment. And then unfortunately, that other person pays for that in
Mhm. Yeah.
your response, you know, if you're not careful. So I agree with you 100%. You know, we all are coming from such varied experiences, and we never know someone else's pain, or what's holding them back or hindering them from not seeing the moment how we might see it.
Yep.
But each are just as valid.
Yes. Yeah. So with the negativity and everything, because our how do we stop the momentum of our brain, like changing our stories? Do you have advice for, you know, everyone listening on how they can begin doing that, because it seems like such a heavy task when you're like, how do I rewrite like every trigger that it has that comes up, and how do
Mm-hmm.
I change to stop being a Velcro for negativity?
Yeah. Yeah, I heard this great thing from Gabrielle Garcia, and she has this thing about stuck stories. It's a great book. So, and it kind of goes through that we all have one main theme that kind of lays the foundation for how we experience life. And so for some people, let's say their stuck story is that they're a victim.
Mm-hmm.
And so maybe as a child, they weren't seen as, in their eyes, as the favorite. And so that they got pushed to the side. And so because their brain's trying to protect them, they create this little story about life, that they're a victim, that things happen to them, that people are always out to get them, that things never happen their way. And so that's kind of the lens that they might see life through. You know, if they don't get a job promotion, well, of course not, you know, I'm never promoted. Or someone breaks up with them and they say, well, of course, you know, I didn't do anything wrong. You know, everyone always hurts me. Everyone always leaves me. And so there's this kind of theme that can run through our lives. And it takes a lot of introspection and just being really honest with yourself to see, you know, like, what is my stuck story? What is the thing that that kind of thread that has gone through all my relationships in life?
Yes.
And so in using that same example of being a victim, it's really a good exercise to go back and try to create a timeline of all of the times in your life that you felt like a victim. And so just to name it, you've probably heard like name it to claim it. And there is something to shining your light of awareness on something in your life to kind of dispel the truth of it.
Yeah.
Because once we really start to unpack it, okay, the first time that I felt like a victim, this happened. And so if you put yourself back as your adult self back into that child's mind and really try to see it from that adult perspective and see all the different angles, it gives us the opportunity maybe to see ourselves not as the victim. And as we start to unpack each one of those situations in our life where we've experienced that stuck story, we can start to realize that this isn't something that defines us.
Yeah.
And that it doesn't have to define us in the future. And so after, you know, you unpack your timeline of all the times that you felt like that, seeing it from different angles, then you can go to the opposite side. When did I feel empowered in my life?
Mm-hmm.
So starting from where you are now and then going all the way back and creating a timeline of all the times that you felt empowered in your life. And then really looking at, well, why did I feel empowered? What about that situation made me feel empowered? And oftentimes what we'll see is that both levels of emotion, both feeling like a victim, feeling empowered, they're all internal emotions. Nobody can make you feel that way. It's your experience, your emotion of choice in that moment. So once we like create that timeline, we realize that all of it is in our hands.
Yeah.
Whether we want to feel empowered or like a victim or whatever it is, it's in our hands and we get to choose that in every single moment. And so then going forward, you can do that same exercise and take a pause. You know, something happens, give yourself a moment and be like, okay, do I want to feel empowered in this moment? Or do I want to feel like a victim in this moment? Do I want to give the power of affecting how I feel to this other person? And I think a lot of times when we think of it that way, when we think about that, we're giving power to somebody else to impact how our internal state is, then people don't like that. They're like, oh, I don't want to give them power over me, you know, only I'm in here. And I really hope that people do feel empowered just by that, you know, your internal state, someone can say something to you, but it can only really get as far as here.
Mm-hmm.
Whether it comes in here or you feel it here, that's really up to you. And so, yeah, that's one way to start unraveling those stuck stories. Sometimes people say, you know, it's helpful to really confront those people in your past that have impacted your life in a way. But sometimes that can cause more pain.
Yeah.
And sometimes just taking the time to talk to yourself through that, or put someone close to you and imagine that they're going through it, you know. So our youngest is 8 years old, and so if I think about stuff that happened in my childhood that was really painful, or the way that I interpreted it, and if I imagine Milaris going through that same thing, I would never want her to put those painful emotions on herself that I put on myself at 8, at 6, at 5.
Yeah.
And so when we put that on someone else, it's like, oh no, it wasn't her fault. And when we do that for someone we love, we can put that same love onto ourselves as a child, you know?
Yeah.
It wasn't your fault.
Yeah.
It wasn't about you. You didn't do anything wrong. And so that can help a lot too.
Yeah. Well, thank you so much for sharing that. And I think that will help a lot of people begin to explore maybe some patterns that show up, or behavior patterns. They can say, oh, how did I react in this situation when I felt disempowered? And how did I react in this situation when I felt empowered? I think becoming a parent has, you know, which kind of catapulted me in more self-development, because I'm now realizing like my perspective as a child was like 25% of the actual reality.
Yeah.
Like you're like, oh, she didn't let me do this, now I feel confined, and like now I can't, like I'm boxed in, or I got in trouble for this and now I can't speak up. But now I'm like parenting my child, and everything going through my head is like, oh my God, how is he gonna interpret this now? Like, you know, it's now all this perception is like, as little kids we had such a limited viewpoint, but now we've taken it into adulthood from that limited viewpoint. So it's kind of like clearing and rearranging our lenses to be able to go back. And for me, writing, like you said, like you can approach, you know, like to be cautious of confronting people, because there's definitely people who I would probably never, you know, because it would bring too much up for me. So instead I choose to write it down and write it out and write those stories out, so that they are out there and my emotions are out there, and they can, I feel in a safe spot to express them.
Well, and sometimes we have to be mindful that what we're experiencing in this moment, whether we feel like we want to release whatever hurt, that we're not like in a vacuum, right? That's going to continue to impact our life moving forward. So if you're in a situation where you feel like it's not safe for me to talk to that person or to confront that, sometimes you can write it down. And like if you want to say to someone how they hurt you, or if there's someone that you really want to forgive, just write it down and either burn it or drown it, you know, put it in a bucket of water, and really take the time to release that and to free it from your mind, that you are letting it go, that it is no longer going to define who you are or how you relate to other people. Because it's so hard when someone who is no longer a part of your life and you're better for it because they hurt you, but yet the impact, the stain that they created on your mind continues to impact your relationships now. And I feel for people, you know, that have that, where they continue to be tainted by maybe the damaging thoughts or the abusive thoughts that someone placed upon them. And so it's really valuable to free yourself from that, so that you can be in the now and use whatever you went through, the mud, to allow yourself to bloom from that.
Yeah. And do you feel like yoga has definitely been one of those things to help you then move through those stories?
Oh, absolutely. Absolutely. And like I said, it's some things are harder to release, definitely, you know, but that's why it's very much a practice, you know. I don't think anything when it comes to personal development or relationships is just a once and done, you know. Like we can all experience transformation where something happens in our life so monumental that everything from that moment forward is a little bit different. But I think the true lasting change in life happens from what you choose to do daily. And one of the things, Abraham Hicks, if you listen to any of her work, one of the things she talks about is whatever you focus on expands in your life. And I think sometimes we do beat the drum of what we don't want, Either we're trying to process through it, or we're so stuck, or we're so upset. We are so full of emotion that our mind is just continuing. And I think of it as a drum beating, because, like a lot of times in cultures, they'll beat a drum and it's kind of like, letting everyone know, like, this is what's going on. And I think when we're beating the drum of what we don't want, we're unconsciously calling more of that into our lives, because it's dictating our state of being, how we are interacting with other people. And so it's really important to make sure that you're monitoring your thoughts.
Yeah.
And what is it that your main focus is each and every day? Are you focusing on what you want more of in your life? Or are you allowing yourself to kind of be pulled into thinking about what you don't want?
Yeah, so I would say, like, especially with Facebook lately, I don't interact much on it, but like, with all of this turmoil going on and the comments, if I read them and I find out that I'm being triggered by them and like the drama in them, like I'm not participating, but I'm observing and I feel it, then something either later in the day or later in like a couple days, I'll be entangled in something that was dramatic that normally doesn't happen to me. Yeah. And I guess I like creating that, like even that I've put myself in that drama filled, like, just little bubble, I'm now pulling that in some way or form, whether it's at like a grocery store and like someone saying something to me. Like, so you are always either pulling in what you want or what you don't want. And, even the yoga and the breathwork practices help for you to take that time during, your day to be able to actually be very mindful of what you're bringing in.
Well, and sometimes when we talk about energy, some people who maybe haven't worked in energy space before with themselves, it seems like really far out there.
Yeah.
But I think probably everyone can relate to when you get like a new car and then you start seeing that new car everywhere on the road. Well, there's this part of your brain called the reticular activating system, and it seeks out things that the brain thinks are important to you.
Yeah.
So when you get a new vehicle, or all of a sudden, let's say you decide that you're going to start landscaping your house, and all of a sudden you start noticing like everyone else is landscaping, and it's because you've identified something as important in your brain, so it's going to start seeking it out. So in the exact same way that phenomenon happens, it's the same thing with what you were saying. Your brain opens up to negativity, to drama, and then it's open. And so then it starts noticing it. It starts, seeing it in other people, or experiences, or the grocery store, where maybe normally if you had set the tone for the day in a really peaceful state, you'd be walking down the aisles and you wouldn't even hear it. But your brain is like, oh, maybe this is important. Maybe I'll pay attention to this. And so it does set the tone for the day. And of course, there's some days where like stuff just happens, right? And I think part of it is just giving ourselves grace, that if there is a day that's really difficult, that you just draw a line under the bottom of the day, and tomorrow's a new day. We can't expect ourselves to have a perfect, peaceful day every day.
Yeah, that's such a good visual to do that, to be able to separate instead of dragging it forward and forward and forward. Because then that heaviness and that weight, you're like, oh, what happened? What did I do? And then it's becoming, again, it's self-sabotaging and holding you back. And I love the direction because I feel like we give direction to our brain on what exactly we want it to find. So I heard an example of, if we want more abundance and you're like, I want more money. And your brain's like, like, okay, let's find more money. And you're walking along and you pick up a penny, or you find a penny, and your brain's like, I got you more money. Like, I did my job. And so it will stop looking for opportunities unless you are like, I want this much. And then if you set that goal, your brain is like, okay, I'm going to look for all the opportunities and possibilities and bring it into your awareness to get you to that place.
And a lot of that starts with what you feel worthy of.
Yes. Yeah. You got to, yep.
And sometimes it's just like the next best feeling thought.
Yes.
So when we're setting the intentions or creating, you know, a vision board, if that's something that people like to do, or if you're just creating the goals, talk about them all the time, you know, with someone that you trust, and make it part of your now reality, so that your brain recognizes, okay, like this is happening. This is something that is going to happen soon. And that's kind of where like creativity comes in. There's a really great book called Big Magic, where she talks about like your creativity, and sometimes when you demand so much from your creativity that it can feel squashed or suffocated at the same time. So in the same way, like with our dreams, I think it's so important to think about them, but not demand from them.
Yeah.
To like think about what it is that we want, and the life that we want. And I know we've talked about this before, but thinking of who you're going to be once you're there.
Yes.
So like if your dream is to, you know, own your own business, okay, what are you going to do daily once you're there, once you've owned your business, once you're operating it? You know, how are you going to live your life? Is there anything different that you're going to do as far as your routine or your thought process? And start embodying that now, and then the rest will fall into place, because you know, you're creating the worthiness in yourself. You're setting yourself up to be that person, so that once that abundance comes, you're ready.
Yeah, and it triggers those actions in you to take action of what that person. I am actually experiencing that now, and it's really crazy because I finally set like such a vision for myself, and then all of a sudden I'm like find myself just moving and moving, and you just got to keep moving and like taking action on things you just who that person would be and what you would do in that circumstance. I love the technique. Also, like if you need to draw in like an emotion, maybe you need to like call in motivation, where you, or maybe you need to push away an emotion you're feeling, like, you know, like kind of separate yourself from it. So if you want to call in motivation, you close your eyes and you think of a time when you felt extremely motivated or extremely energized, and you like pull it closer and closer into you, that moment, so that you're feeling it in that moment, and then you lock it in place, like the sound of a master lock, like and like I actually, that really works for me. Like if I need energy, and or maybe I'm calling in a part of me that felt what I want to feel all the time, you know, in that ideal vision of myself, and I want to call that in the present moment so I can work within that space.
Oh, that's so good. Oh, I just love that, because one of the things of yoga is they say everything that you need is already within you.
Yeah. Yes.
Sometimes it's just kind of, like I said, unfolding those layers and discovering it. And sometimes we can be searching outside of ourselves in other people or in material things or in whatever for what we need. I'll be happy once I achieve that. I'll be happy if my partner treats me this way. Well, none of that, because that's all dependent upon the outside, you know, the outer world. And so if you can create situations and emotions in your inner world where you are solely responsible for them. You know, if I want to feel happy, if I want to feel empowered, if I want to feel joyful, I'm going to go to a place in my memory and feel it in my physical body. I can do that. You know, it's not dependent on anyone else or anything going right, to really feel that. That's great. I love that.
Yeah, and that's why I really love that you know, approach the topic of the most important person is you, because you are creating all of that. It's not that other, you don't need all these other things to make you feel whole. It's, for a long time, I really felt alone. There's a good chunk of period in my life where I just felt like lonely. And really it was, I didn't like being with myself. So, and that like has turned full circle now. I'm like, I get, all right, see you later. Like I can go sit by myself for a couple hours, like, you know, and it's really becoming in love with who you are, and that you already have all that stuff that you think will make you who you want to be with. But I love that, like, you know, everything that you're about is about making the person inside of you very full and filled up.
Well, and then it helps us in all those things that we want to be good at. You know, I want to be a great partner to my husband. I want to be a great stepmother, a great daughter. And by taking time to develop a relationship with myself and cultivating that and figuring out how it is that I feel about things and why things upset me or what things make me happy. By discovering all that, then I can be better in all of those other relationships. I can show up as more of who I am to all those people that I love.
Yeah, and I think that's a goal for a lot of us. And, you know, just to be a better person, to raise the, you know, energy of the world or the energy of a room. And I know, you know, the moment I met you, you came in and you are like a beam of light. Like you know, like there's those people that you influence energies, and in a good and not so good way. And you were one that, like, when I first met you, I was like, wow, like you know, I was already warmed up to you. I feel like I put on yellow today because like you, like that is the energy I feel from you. So like everything you're doing is working clearly because you have created this part of you that I feel like I was automatically comfortable with you. And that's how you know, I feel like I want to feel towards other people.
Well, thank you. It's
Yeah.
one of those things, I think we as women, this is why the feminine tribe is so powerful and so important, is because really important relationships are our relationships with other women in our
Yes.
life. And a lot of people have a lot of hurt in their past from friendships or specifically, you know, relationships with girls in the past, either in elementary school or, you know, high school or college, things that didn't go well,
Yeah.
where they felt turned upon or betrayed or put down. I mean, just you hear stories of just girls being awful towards each other. And I think the feminine tribe is a great place for women to empower and support one another and to see each other winning and applaud and be happy for each other. And that's, I'm so grateful for you inviting me into the feminine tribe, because this is what it's all about. You know, this, if your stuck story is that you just don't have close friendships, or if your stuck story is that I just can't connect with other people, you know, it's really important to find a supportive, true group of women or friends that can support you and honor you and respect you and just want the best for you.
Yeah.
That's, relationships are one of the #1 predictors of good health. There was a study that was just published, I can't remember the specifics, but that, you know, besides eating well and exercise and water and, you know, sleep and all those things, the quality of your innermost close relationships is one of the #1 predictors of longevity.
Wow.
Oftentimes we overlook that.
Yeah. Yes.
You know, it's kind of like a byproduct, you know, so sometimes it's, if the choice is between, you know, working out or spending time with my husband, if we really need it, we'll spend time together. You know, it's a bonus if we can like work out and, you know, spend time together. But I think sometimes our priorities get shifted towards the doing, when really the best thing for our health could just be being together.
Oh yeah, I agree. Because you really, people I think really feel the effects of loneliness and, you know, not connecting or shutting themselves out because maybe they don't feel worthy of having that interaction with someone, or like, oh yeah, do they like me, or they don't want to be judged. And I
Mm-hmm.
think that was my biggest thing going in creating the feminine tribe, is breaking down that judgment barrier, especially between women, being honest with what they want, with what they think they deserve. And I want every woman to know that she deserves, you know, abundance, financial abundance. I think that, you know, like love, like friendships that, with people they can trust and who they can share their craziest dream. That was always my thing. I'm like, tell me your craziest goal or craziest dream, and I actually will not think it's crazy. Like, I will tell you how, like, I will be your biggest supporter, because I believe I want to be people's biggest cheerleaders in that, and knowing that they can create that or create whatever they want without those limitations. And going through high school, I think it is definitely like, I don't, you know, from a young age, that competitive, that cultural standpoint of, you know, even it becomes like romantic relationships in high school, where then the like girls are just become butting heads, or they think they are separated. But if they, I always wanted to go to high schools and speak and get all the girls together and be like, you are not your enemies. You're actually, like, if you would all develop these relationships right now. So if any high schoolers are listening, like,
Mm-hmm.
develop as many relationships and break down those, I guess, ego barriers, of like, she's, you know, like this or that, and I can't be friends with everyone. I got to stay in cliques. I would say wipe out those barriers and start building your relationships now, so that, because in business and life, all of that, having a group of supportive women is going to just excel you even more so.
Mm-hmm. Well, and I think a lot of that stems from comparison and fear. And a lot of times people, they keep someone like about here because they're fearful of being compared to that person. And, you know, comparison's the thief of joy. I think we've all heard that before, you know, when, because where each one of us are is very unique to our life. And I think a lot of times, especially in those close female relationships, we can compare ourselves or feel like we can't support that other person in doing well, because then it means that we're not doing well. And it can get really competitive and, like you said, egotistical. And I'm very blessed. My best friend, Shelly, she is so supportive of me and everything that I want to do and accomplish. And but she's also very truthful, you know, like if I'm doing something wrong, you know, she'll tell me like, cut it out, you know. And so I think that honesty in relationships is really important too. But everything takes time, you know, like to show up as a good friend and a supportive friend, an honest friend, then you first have to work on yourself so that you can be those things to someone.
Yeah. And, you know, maybe sometimes the reactions, I think, you know, every person's needs are different in how they want you to react or how they want you to show up for them.
Mm-hmm.
So also learning what those needs are, I think, is also very important to connect to. Like, do they need this from me? Do I need to be more compassionate, or do I need to acknowledge their feelings, or do they want me to be like super harsh and like be like, do this and then you'll get this, or do they want to just talk, you know, talk?
Mm-hmm. And
So
some people are like external processors, you know, like my sister is an external processor. So she wants to like talk it out. She wants to talk about what happened, like how she felt, what they said, what she said, you know, and other people are very much internal. They're going to do that on their own. And they just want to tell you, hey, I just need to be around you.
yeah.
They don't want you to solve it for them. They're not really asking for advice. You know, they just want you to be there with them. And I think realizing that each person is unique in what they need. And just because I might want someone to talk it through with me, that doesn't mean that that's what you need. Mm-hmm. So if I start like giving you advice and, oh, you should say this and then you should do that, well, that might not be what you need in that moment.
Yeah, I agree. And I definitely had you know, like just getting used to coaching and stuff, I've had to prevent myself from trying to coach, or just like, I'm like, I see the pattern, I see the thing, and I just want to like give you this like solution, but I also got to be mindful of everyone else's, how they're processing, or how maybe they just want like me to sympathize with them and wait till they are ready for their solution or to take the next step or action.
Mm-hmm. Yeah.
So you've really tied, you know, your fitness and even your nutrition together in one thing. So I wanted to address your, because you are the co-founder of Soul Fitness.
Yes.
Can you talk about that a little bit?
Yeah, thank you. So my husband and I started Soul Fitness in 2015, and he works part-time as a personal trainer, and of course I teach yoga, and people were always coming up to us asking for advice about different things. A lot of times it's nutrition based, like what should I be eating before my workouts, after my workouts, and of course I love when people come and ask those questions, and it was very much one-on-one, not anything formal. You know, people would just you know, ask Jose, hey, like what are you doing? And I said, you know, we can really reach more people if we created a platform that reaches more people. And so we decided to start a YouTube channel, and we started it about 1.5 years ago in January. And so we just do videos on workouts that you can do at home, different nutrition things, a lot of mindfulness, different strategies, the importance of spending time in nature. So we just have videos on like all kinds of things. But honestly, it was something for him and I to do together. That was a passion, a joint venture. And it's really brought our relationship closer because it gives us something that we're building together. Oftentimes what brings us the most joy isn't actually like attaining something, but just seeing that progress. you know, so creating something together, being creative, talking about what we want to do. And so it's really fun. We love doing it, and we do it in Spanish and in English, so that we can reach all of our family and friends in the Dominican Republic as well, and of course here in the States. But again, you know, like with anything, it gives you, it's like a mirror. Anything that you do within a relationship, it gives you a mirror back to yourself. I'm very much like, okay, we got to film a video today, like, you know, let's get it done. And he's like, tranquila, you know, like, well, it'll happen, you know. So it's a great opportunity for us to learn about each other, and just to share with people. You know, there's so much out there in the health and nutrition space. And really the focus of our channel is on holistic wellness, how you can create a vibrant life by addressing your physical health, your mental health, and your relationship wellness as well.
Yeah, well, you guys are super cute together. Watching you guys. So I think everyone, you know, who's watching this should go just, you know, give you a follow. And I think it's something, what you guys are doing and putting out there is very, you know, connective. And even as couples, like it gives couples like something to watch and be able to, you know, guide them to developing a relationship as well within the fitness and nutrition and doing things together.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, it's great to have, you know, someone that's your motivator, because there's maybe, of course, days that you don't want to do what you know you should do. So it's great to have someone that's in it with you and for you and wants to support you.
Yes, yeah, my husband does that. He's like, you need to get up and work out. I'm like, no, but I'm so comfy just laying here not doing anything. Just like I'm so like I, you know, work on my computer a lot. So I'm like, I like just being at my computer. And he's like, okay, maybe you need to get up and move around. So yeah, having that person is really important because I mean, not everyone has their own like personal trainers like at home. So if you know, I think your videos can help motivate people to help them do it from, you know, the ease of their computer screen and or even watch on their phone and be able to do the things you guys have put out there.
Yeah, it's lots of fun. Yeah, there's we're also putting things on our Instagram as well. It's Whitney_soul_fitness is my handle on Instagram, and so we post videos too on IGTV of different workouts as well.
Great. So everyone can go follow you on there and on the YouTube. Is it the YouTube channel? Is it just Soul Fitness and they'll be able to find you, or is it?
Yep. If you search Soul Fitness, we should pop up as one of the first couple there.
Okay, great. Well, thank you so much for hopping on. And I loved this talk because I think, you know, the inner work and all these things that you are encompassing is, you know, going to help so many people. And this is just a really good conversation to have that brings it all to a whole.
Yeah, thank you so much for having me. It was just a joy to talk through everything. And it's very much, anyone could do this.
Yeah.
You know, I'm not unique or special in the fact that I've gone down this path of personal development. I think that it's available for everyone, and there's no one way that it looks right. It's just a matter of deciding that you're worth it.
Yeah.
And that your relationship is worth it and that your life is worth it, and just taking one step at a time.
Yeah. Yeah.